So my name's Michaela.
I'm Jolie.
And I'm Megan.
And our research analyzes the varying perceptions in the changes in the seed regulation sector.
So we're going to start by looking at the foundation, so just some definitions and terms, and then go into our literature review, methods, results, discussions, conclusion, and then some questions at the end if you have any.
Okay, so this is a quote from Neil Young, and it just kind of encompasses the perception that many people have, and especially his perceptions on Monsanto and the monopolization of the seed sector. So what is UPOV? So UPOV is like a group of people that collaborate and make a set regulations and policies which countries can adopt and use. So it aims to protect plant breeders' rights and their patented seed varieties. So Canada adopted UPOV 78 and 91, recently 91, and UPOV aims to increase uniformity amongst the seed sector and increase global trade. Oh, I didn't go over that. So public and private, so originally the seed sector was mostly public, so it allows inputs from farmers and more openness, where it's transitioning into the private sector, so companies have more control over the ongoings. And so the perceptions that we looked at were from lobbyists, farmers, government, researchers, and people that denoted themselves as other.
So the methods for our survey and interviews, we created a uniform set of questions for both online interviews via the SurveyMonkey platform and a semi-structured interview over the phone. From both formats, we received feedback from 8 people from varying backgrounds. The questions we came up with were, number 1, which of the following best describes yourself? Farmer, activist, researcher, or other? 2, can you tell us about your experience in seed regulation and agriculture? 3, are you familiar with UPOV 91? 4, what is your perception of UPOV 91? A, if you are familiar with the above statement, how has the changing regulation in seed saving impacted your work or research? And B, if unfamiliar, would you be interested in learning more? 5, what are your perceptions of genetically modified organisms? 6, do you believe modern agriculture can shift away from GMO crops? A, if so, what do you think needs to be done to induce this shift? And B, if not, why? And lastly, 7, what do you believe would be the best case scenario for modern agriculture moving forward?
So in the literature review, we kind of broke it up into 3 sections of what we actually researched. So the first one was how UPOV 91 has been researched in Canada. And since it's new, it was adopted last year, there's not a lot of actual academic literature on it. However, there have been a couple articles about seed breeding and kind of touching on UPOV 91. And I guess the big trend in academic literature is that it's better for large corporations and it's not really benefiting farmers. I guess a quote that really encompasses it all by Catherine Phillips is, "Saving seed offers empowerment and control while also challenging the state-facilitated corporate control of seeds and related practices." So essentially there's this idea that when farmers aren't able to save their seed or do what they want with their seed, they're losing control and power, and obviously that's not good. I also saw some literature, mostly news articles and such from the government that obviously really loves UPOV 91 and talks about how it's important, super necessary so that farmers can participate in the global market and that investment and innovation can continue and increase in Canada.
So we also, because there's not a lot of research done in Canada, we widened our scope to Africa, Chile, India, and Europe, which is where we got most of our resources from. And the conclusions were kind of similar to what we found from farmers and researchers in Canada. Well, not in Canada, but where we are, who we interviewed. And basically they all kind of concluded to that it's these restrictive seed regulations are detrimental to small-scale farmers in developing countries, and that there shouldn't be a one-size-fit-all policy for everyone, since every country works differently. So we found it was very similar to what we found.
And there were people we were unable to reach because of limitations, which we'll talk about later. So we did some secondary research on corporations, government, and activists, which we will address in our results section.
So everyone that we interviewed, we're keeping them anonymous. But as far as farmers go, the ones that are inorganic, they all said that that collectively it's stifling their tradition to save their seed and reuse it the next year. However, the organic farmer said it doesn't affect the way that it doesn't affect their work, but they also feel for their non-organic colleagues in the field. And the researcher that we reached out to, they said that they agree with farmers, and that it ultimately, UPOV 91 doesn't help the farmer, it helps the seed corporations.
The perspectives of NGOs, lobbyists, and activists in regards to UPOV 91 tend to be really mixed. We had a chance to interview a lobbyist for small scale farmers who offered an interesting perspective on UPOV 91, as well as the related biotechnology, which is that there's both pros and cons to UPOV 91. He feels like most NGOs, lobbyists, and activists that UPOV 91 is problematic because it's indicating a shift towards private appropriation of variety, but we want it to be in the public domain. They also believe that it's not fair to farmers to not be adequately compensated for their work. They believe that biotechnology is outlawed in the organic sector for a reason, which is that there's a lot we don't know about it. However, all biotechnology is not bad. Some can be very productive. The problem is the way in which it is administered. There's no public transparency, and it's ecologically harmful farming. It's not so much GMOs in particular, but the kind of agrochemical farming that it's endorsing. Then there's the other side of NGOs and activists that believe that UPOV 91 is inherently evil and should be completely eliminated. They believe that their right to save and exchange open-pollinated, non-GMO, non-patented seed is non-alienable, farmers' rights are non-negotiable, and they seek to resist every law and technology that attempts to undermine their freedoms and the freedom of the seed. So that's kind of the divide that's going on right now between the NGOs and the activists.
So we reached out to multiple members of government and to corporations, where we received some responses, but none of them ended up actually completing our survey, or we never ended up being able to actually talk to them. So for the government, we found a pretty useful article where they answer questions about UPOV 91, which was pretty good for helping us fill in our gaps. Essentially, they think it's really good. It's the bee's knees. It's really encouraging innovation, and it's bringing up investments in seed and developing new varieties and new patents. They also state that it's not hurting farmers, that it does not change their ability to be able to save seed and use it on their farms the next year. It's simply not letting them sell it, which was not like a new element in 91. It was something that was also in the UPOV 78 before they transitioned as well. So they don't think it's hurting farmers at all. In fact, it should be better for them because it's saying that farmers' rights is in UPOV 91 now. They actually talk about farmers' rights, and so farmers should be reassured. But anyways, that's the government perspective. And when it comes to when it comes to corporations, from the literature, we can kind of tell that they're the ones benefiting the most from it. So they're not actually writing a lot of articles about how great this is for them. However, they obviously side with the government, saying that it's really important to participate in the global market and for people to be able to protect their patents and their seed developments.
Yeah, obviously it would be beneficial for us to, like, if they would have answered our questions, because it would kind of fill in our gaps, but as soon as they saw our questions, they were just like, no go.
So there were some limitations that we faced. One of them is time restrictions. We could only speak to a limited amount of people because some of our groups were small, such as we only had one researcher. Some of our research may be biased, although we tried to balance this out by conducting secondary research. All of the research conducted for government and corporations was collected through secondary sources. Therefore, we were unable to have any of them actually complete our survey, not for a lack of trying, however. The majority of people who completed our survey are involved in seed saving or are very aware of the process and of UPOV. Had we had the time and the resources, we could have spoken to more farmers, researchers, activists, etc., to have more balanced results, but we tried to support that gap with literature.
So our conclusions are that, obviously, as you can tell, there's not really a clear consensus, but we have been able to identify some trends. So, obviously, the farmers and activists and whatnot tend to be on one side and the governments and corporation on the other.